Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Random Quest Generator. Joining me today is Pookie and Max. Three of us, so let's get cracking. If you do like this, by the way, I know I keep forgetting to say this. Please like, subscribe, and we can go on more sort of random jaunts into whatever the hell this is. So, without further ado, Max, we haven't seen you for a while. I believe you've been back. You've been back home.
Yes, I was back home in Poland for a little bit. I brought some role-playing goodies back with me from my childhood, some Polish, some non-Polish. So this will hopefully lead into some more videos in the future.
Cool. Pookie, anything new with you or?
The only thing new, I suppose, is that I actually got my review done of This Far West.
Yeah.
But I literally did it within a few days of receiving it, and I wrote it sort of like as a counterbalance to a lot of people going, "Oh my god, it's out and it's utterly terrible. It's the worst thing that's ever been put out because it's so late and because a lot of the controversy attached to it." Kind of pleased with the response I got from a couple of people.
Cool.
And it's, how can I put it? It's far from perfect. It's not a bad attempt. Ultimately, the genre itself is probably the best thing about it. I mean, the combination of the wuxia and the Western, the rules themselves kind of creak a bit because it's a mixture of the storytelling aspects of the fate system and the D6 system that was used in Star Wars in 1987, which does kind of show its age.
Oh, cool. Personally, I'm really nothing changed from last episode. I'm still trying to finish this dungeon that I've started to write. I will be organising an online game as well. So that's me done, really. So on to the questions. So, guys, Max, I haven't seen you for a while. Have you got a D20 handy?
I don't, but I have what modern kids use nowadays, which is a phone.
You roll for me, please.
D20. There we go. And it gets an 8.
An 8, right? Okay. According to this, okay. How do you keep your games as a GM interesting?
Wow, that's a loaded question because it assumes I run interesting games. But assuming I do, it's been about half a year since I ran last time, so I'll base it mostly on that. But I think in broad general, um, if you run a game for people that you know and you're friends with, or it's your coworkers, somebody that you're aware of what they want, and it's not a game full of people who are new to RPGs. Because I think if people are new to RPGs, you should run something pretty generic. I think that really helps them get a hold of it, and the familiarity with generic things like generic fantasy or generic horror really helps. But if you run for people that you know and you know what kind of takes their fancy, you should just run that. um, if you know that your players like to crawl through a dungeon, you should just make sure that you do the most dungeon-y dungeon you can possibly do. You should hit all of these kind of, you should hit your traps, you should hit your monsters encounters, you should hit your underground factions, whatever it takes. And in a more kind of broader thing, I think keeping game interesting is about as much about you as a GM as it is also on the players. But since we're focusing on the GM, I think what I do is I take quite well, inspiration is maybe a bad word, but I do read a lot online about different people how they run things. One of my one of my favorite people to read is the Angry GM, who's a bit controversial. I don't think he's a nice person per se, but a lot of his advice are pretty on point, even if delivered in a very obnoxious manner. One of the things that he got me to do is when I was running the Tomb of the Reptile God, Temple of the oh god, what was the name of the adventure? It's a first edition D&D adventure. I was running it on third edition, and
You know which one?
yeah, what I was doing is at all times I was asking players what their characters do. In this sort of it became easier later on. At start, it was a bit awkward because I would describe something and then ask each individual player what their character does at the time. And every single time some action was finished, the story progressed, I would ask again. And quite often what happened was that some of the players' characters just continued doing what they were doing because, some of them were keeping watch or something. But what I found was that it kept people in the game, even if all they did is like, yep, my character is still keeping a watch.
Yeah.
My character is still cooking. My character is still picking the lock. It's not finished yet. So I think that a lot about interest is about keeping people occupied with the game itself. I find that I'm not the best narrator, probably. I can't just mesmerize people with what I say. And I find that personally, whenever I'm a player, I drift off whenever people start talking, especially GMs start talking too much. Fortunately, I haven't had that done to me in years now, many years. But back in when I was young, that was very much a thing. People were inspired by this sort of very much a storytelling way. Storytelling with mechanics, which just means that you take the worst parts of both. So I think that a lot about interest is making sure that all the players are actually in the game and doing the game part of it. Which doesn't necessarily mean they're rolling dice, but that they're they're declaring actions, they're responding to what you tell them. Now, another thing that I like doing is I like to keep my I play mostly fantasy, so I like to keep my fantasy fairly grounded. I like to base my descriptions on things that I think would have happened, even if in a fantastical world. And for that, it means that I have to rely quite a bit on phrases, especially in English, since it's not my first language. I think that making sure that you can describe something, even using a common phrase, but that immediately brings into the head of the player the image you're trying to convey. One of the best examples I've ever heard, and forgive me if that's also from the Angry GM, I can't remember, is that if you want to describe a spooky cemetery at night, you just say spooky cemetery at night, and everybody knows exactly what it is. And I think that those very snappy, short, direct phrases that can paint a picture very easily are what gets players immediately in the action or immediately in the narration of the game. So that's the aspect that I definitely wish I was better at, because sometimes, and my friends that I played with a couple of years ago in Edinburgh will confirm, sometimes I misunderstand things in English. So that runs both ways as a player and as a GM. So training these things is also quite important to me. Just trying to figure out if there's anything else. I mean, there's obviously things that are inherently interesting to a lot of people. I mean, if you run your combats well and they're exciting, and there's a lot happening and people can make meaningful choices while also having that sort of push-pull of are we gonna win, are we gonna lose, that's naturally interesting. So if your party is inclined to do action, you should just do action.
Like you said, it does depend on your group, what you how you're doing it. So really good advice there, really cool. So
I mean, I would also add, basically look at what the character wants in the long term and see whether you can serve that within the story. Look at the role they've got in the world. If they're a wizard, do they want to find more spells or a magic item, or do they want to get themselves involved in the local events? and cultures in the setting, and allow them room to do that if they want to.
Again, really cool advice. Or throw in something that's a little bit distracting. Like, for example, they'll be going off on their adventure doing what have you, and then suddenly there's a blazing meteorite, across the sky. No reason, no build up, no previous lore in the setting for it. It's just a big blazing meteorite in the sky.
Well, I mean, that comes back to the Dashiell Hammett thing about, of having some thugs burst into the room with guns. Why? Well, we'll sort that out later. At this point, what's happening now?
Yeah, really cool. So, Pookie, I think we'll go on to you next, if that's all right.
Yes, certainly. I've got 19.
19. Didn't we have that last time? But obviously, it's a different question. I'll have to keep some stats for this.
I got 12 last time, I think.
Yeah. I think I rolled. Yeah, I rolled a 19, didn't I? So, anyway, the new question for 19 is, okay, do you prefer to run your own settings, or those that you bought?
Or actually, I prefer to run settings that I've bought, partly because essentially they can. Those settings are already accessible not just by me, but also by the players, so they can come to understand them at the same time. And also, I don't have to do the hard work of sitting down and creating it all and so on. I've done some of that in the past, but these days there are so many settings out there which are rich in flavor and detail that you want to go, oh, I really want to play that, or I really want to be that character, or I really want to tell that story. So, for example, I like the Glorantha setting for RuneQuest. And there's plenty of sort of like beginning material for that, whether you're going to pick up the GM, basic GM pack, which is very good, or the starter set. But there's a supplement called 6 Seasons in Sarta, available on Drive-Thru, which really takes you and your characters from first steps in the setting as young adults, and being initiated as adults and into a faith, into a religion or cult, and get you involved in the events of the setting and the story that the scenario is going to tell you, and pull you along and discover more about the world, and at the same time without overloading you with information. And that's what essentially a good setting will do. I mean, with you look at the other settings, a lot of them you kind of based upon particular films or television and so on. So you want to go, oh, I like the alien setting, Alienverse. I really want to go and role playing in that. I want to explore that from an entirely different point of view, rather than me passively sat at home watching the video on my television screen. I mean, this is much. I mean, yes, there might have been computer games based upon that, that intellectual property, but with the role playing, it's far more immersive and interesting.
Cool. Yeah. And as well, I suppose, if you've got, like, for example, a predetermined setting like Alien, you can carve out your own particular sort of like subset in it, even to the point of slightly altering to sort of perceived sort of norms within the setting, which again goes back to your question, which would make things interesting.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, you take something like Delta Green. It's really quite a simple thing which they've created, but there's a lot of depth and detail to it. But you take a campaign like Impossible Landscapes, you'd be amazed if you came up with something like that yourself and ran that and created it. But if you've run it, if you've played it, then you can turn to another player or game master and say, have you played this? Have you run this? what happened in your game? It's there's a commonality of sort of like of discussion there.
Yeah.
You know, what happened what happened in the scenario when this happened?
Yes, you can kind of like get brought together almost.
Mm.
Yeah, that's cool. Right then.
Can I quickly ask a really quick question that's kind of on my mind right now? Because there's a lot of settings that were created specifically for games, you know, like Faerun or Dragonlance, obviously for D&D. But there's also the settings that came from other IPs, you know, the Lord of the Rings, the Middle Earth setting, or like my very favorite setting in fantasy, which is the Witcher world. I find that the latter ones, the ones that are based on different kind of on novels or TV shows or movies, they not only come as settings in terms of geography and people who live the races and whatnot. Those are kind of secondary, but they also come with style of play. Do you think that?
To a point, yeah. Well,
Yes.
undeniably, yes. They also come with problems as well. In some ways, for example, Lord of the Rings is a big one.
Yeah.
I forget his name. He did an amazing video of sort of like basically why he had such trouble running Lord of the Rings, because no one else seemed to share his vision, and it caused various problems. He could run D&D all day long. Everyone kind of like so, but his particular vision of what Middle Earth was became problematic over the years, to the point where he stopped running it. It's a bit of a two-edged sword, isn't it? Because my version of any particular IP will be completely, well, not it will be ever so slightly different to everyone else sat around the table, because it's like that old thing, isn't it? You know, if we all take part in an event and then we're interviewed afterwards, we all
you get different answers.
I don't know why that is, but just one of those things.
Well, I mean, I think in the case of the One Ring, I think it's been very cleverly pitched away from all of the big events. I mean, you know, that's the one, that was the one big problem you were kind of facing. Again, well, what do you do about the Hobbit? What do you do about the Lord of the Rings? And pitching it in those years between gives a lot of scope for storytelling and exploration. And I mean, I like the starter set, for example. People go, "Oh, I don't like that because it just means you're all playing hobbits." And I went, and you're all playing. Where's the fun in that? And I went, "You've got to be kidding! Getting to play characters whom you've only just seen mentioned in the background and bringing them to life that Tolkien never did. That's a huge opportunity. I mean, I looked at that and I went, okay, if you know your Tolkien lore, anybody should be sort of like chomping at the bit to play Lobelia Bracegirdle.
Yeah.
As a young hobbit, that's fantastic.
Or you just, you know, you play a number of juvenile hobbits, possibly like the starter set, because it's not just hobbits in there.
The starter set, it is.
Dwarf, I believe. I believe there is one dwarf, I think.
Well, no, the dwarf is not there really as a player character. He's more there as a sort of like as a possible patron.
Oh right, yeah. Sorry.
That's all right.
But you could literally, you know, you could spend years within the Shire. You could go, you know, you could stealing crops from farm, playing pranks on various people, you know, all, you know, various things, and then suddenly, as you're in the outskirts of the Shire, you know, something strange happens, or you know, there's an orc, or you know, there's a murder, or there's
yeah. I mean, the thing is,
endless.
You've got the adventures within the box set, and then in the current edition, it can't quite do it. But if you find the Bree source book for the previous edition, that was pitched as sort of like as a beginning kind of setting. But if you pitch that sort of like as the connected thing, you will have sort of like a thread from the Shire to Bree, and then perhaps beyond. Ultimately, you're not going to go very far necessarily with those characters because they don't go very far in canon, but you know, you'll have a decent little mini campaign in the process.
Exactly, which I mean, it's the whole point of, you know, role playing.
Yeah, and I mean, there's still plenty of scope for you to sort of like personalize these characters, because for the most part, they're kind of blank. Those characters in particular are kind of blank slate.
Yeah. Right. So just me left, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Max, could you roll an electronic dice?
Do you want me to roll for you?
I mean, I really want to hear the clattering of the phone rolling across the table, but you know.
Whoa! Well, you know. Oh, sorry. Where is it? Where's the focus?
Right.
That is a nine. That is a 19. Just so you know. There we go.
19.
We've just
Which is what you just had.
Yeah.
19. So, if you could do me a favor, could you roll again for me, please?
Yep. 17.
17. Right. 17. Okay. What do I think about using miniatures and maps as a GM? Something I've never done really. Well, I've used maps. That's a lie. I'll take maps first. I love maps. It's why I've ordered all of them for the Kickstarter for Moria. Just beautiful things. You know, the Dragonbane map. Like to have a map draped over a table and to play over the setting map. I think invokes sort of certain feelings, which is quite sort of engaging, things like that. Back when I ran 3rd edition D&D, I'd create my own sort of versions of the maps on squared paper. Then we'd have little markers for miniatures and things like that, sort all that out. I've not long invested in a dry white large sort of, you know, double-sided map. I love all that stuff, you know, like the sort of as you're going through, you know, progressing that, like, you know, the dungeon and the area, and sort of making you know, making progress, and as a GM, you're sort of showing the players what's going on. It sort of draws them all in to, you know, like you know, to the table. Certain sense of dread and sort of anticipation for, you know, what's going to, you know, what is this room, what's going to be in it, things like that, which is quite cool. I don't tend to use miniatures. Storage and attention span, weirdly, because I've got to make them. I've got to keep them. I've got to do something. You know, I get sorry. Thank you. And I've got to sort of engage with this sort of item that, and my attention span is, I don't do well with it. Joys of ADHD, etc. Whereas a map, I can obsess about all day long. So I'm kind of half in and half out. I've recently invested in sort of like paper miniatures and things like that, because I thought I need to have something, you know, like for character representation, or sort of whatever creatures or NPCs are, you know, knocking around. So yeah, for me it's half. I'd say it was half and half. I love having maps, I love creating maps, but miniatures, to be honest with you, I find it quite intimidating, sort of off-putting, to be honest with you, because I'm more of running games anyway. I'm more of a mind's eye theatre sort of person. I do a lot of sort of how do you call it? Sort of, oh, it's kind of like unplanned adventures. There'll be an idea, or, you know, be like, right, okay, you're a gang, you're in out like, you know, you're in like you operate out of a warehouse, and you run drugs on the side, and you've got to sort of make money, and like the big crime boss is going to come down. Let's go from that for that particular setting. So let's go from there, and I'll do a few hours of that. So I haven't really got the collection of miniatures for that. As nice as that would be. I think like tokens and things like that, you're always going to do that. Or
I gotta say, I've been a wargamer before I was a role player, and even here I've got hundreds of miniatures for wargaming.
Yeah,
and it's a money sink. It's 100% a money sink. Collecting them, gluing them together, cleaning them up, metals, plastics, no matter, painting them. That all takes way more time than actually playing role-playing games.
Yeah.
So I always tell people who, because a lot of new players look at them and they are cool, right? They're like, oh, I wish I could paint my own miniatures. Like, yeah, paint one, that's fine. Paint 200. It's hours, weeks of work, months, if not years.
It's just like I'd rather have the book, a dry wipe area, draw a map, my X, you're there, X, sort of, and just use my imagination. But again, this is what sort of it's what the groups I've always been with have sort of done, and what works for us. Including some convention games as well. It was sort of by a happy accident, the people I've sort of gamed with, at, various conventions, we've always had luckily similar interests.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I ran anything, a big campaign, again, I was running RuneQuest, and there were a couple of adventures which really did call for miniatures. Apple Lane, defending Griggle's pawn shop. I mean, I got the big white, basically square grid, drew out the map of the floor plans of the house and the building which had to be defended. And then essentially, the players all had their own miniatures because one of my players provided miniatures for them. Lots of little miniatures for the attackers, and it was really a very tense experience because they could see everything on the map, and they could see where things were going on and where attacks might be happening, but they were far away. They couldn't react to what was going over on there. So that did actually add to the tension and sort of the desperation of the situation. So they do work like that, and they can be a great aid. And especially at that point where you have suddenly put on, you see this riding towards you, and what you actually see is a bestial man with great tusks jutting out of his jaws, riding a great boar, riding down, and you put that miniature down on the table. That has a kind of physical sort of impact.
Yeah. I mean, what set me off, it's behind me somewhere. The Dragon, the Dragonbane box set. They come with fantastic miniatures. That's what really sort of kicked me off into thinking, well, go the paper miniature route, because even if I'm doing like Alien, for example, or any other space-based sort of role-playing game, things like that, sci-fi, etc. There's loads of download, which is really cool.
There's also an extra pack of quite heavy-duty miniatures, flat miniatures you can get for Dragonbane separately as well.
Yeah. That's on my to-buy list because they just look, and they're sort of thick and chunky and
I mean, there's there's been a bit of a shift slightly away from doing sort of like three-dimensional metal or plastic miniatures to doing kind of flats, even in plastic.
Yeah, the sort of like plastic card, transparent. Yeah.
But I mean, basically, but actually quite high quality and sturdy.
And it's even kind of bled through into sort of war games as well, because you can get. I know there's a lot of there's the Civil War, the British Civil War. The Roundheads.
English Civil War. English Civil War.
The Napoleonics as well. It's all like you buy it and print out your army.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely incredible. But yeah, I'm slowly getting into using miniatures. Also as well, because I've got the means to buy it now and produce, and you know, it's becoming, dare I say it, cheaper and easier to sort of get hold of. Because you know, there's a lot of companies out there who are basically sort of like, well, you know, there's a hole in the market. So if we produce decent, cheap quality paper-based miniatures, people will buy them. I mean, I know Drive-Thru it is chock full of, you know,
Drive-Thru has a lot of not Drive-Thru, Wargaming, the Wargaming equivalent, Wargaming's Vault, something like that. That has a lot of free paper miniature for historicals, but obviously a lot of the medieval knight and fantasy and the medieval knight in history, you know.
Yeah, it's just you know, you can change it over. You know, you can take like you can take a knight from, you know, whatever century in this world, and you know, and use them in well, just about anything really, from Pendragon through to any edition of D&D really.
Yeah. I mean, and even I'm thinking, if you go back to a bit of history here with the trying to think, there's a board game called Cry Havoc, and its sequel Siege. I'm just trying to work out who the no, that's not it.
Pricey on eBay nowadays.
Yeah, no, it's basically from Standard Games back in the early 80s. The miniatures were basically were highly coloured flats, you know, and you'd get actually two of them, two per figure, so you could actually do them in different states of you know, health. Basically, yeah, medieval games, Cry Havoc and Siege, really nicely done, but very expensive to track down these days. Although there's a little bit of a kind of, I don't know, a bit of a renaissance in them of people going, yeah, do you remember this? And got their own website.
Really cool. Right. Well, I think we'll end our weekly adventure there. It's absolutely fascinating so far. Again, if you do like this, please like and subscribe. Join us next week as we continue our quest for answers. Thank you guys as always.
Thank you.